Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome to In the Safe Zone. Today I am going to be discussing the task of mourning and different myths about grief. Let's get right into it, guys. After a death, survivors are left to face the pain of grief in a new world without their loved one. Mourning is the process of adapting to loss through the completion of four tasks. Keep in mind that adapting doesn't mean forgetting. It means finding a way to cherish the memories of a loved one while continuing to move forward in life. It means adjusting to a world without the deceased while holding a place for them in your heart. The main thing you want to remember is this process is not about forgetting and giving up on those that we lost. Task number one, accept the reality of the loss. After a death, it's common that the reality of the situation is minimized or denied. To complete the task, the reality of the loss must be fully accepted, both intellectually and emotionally. Task number two, process the pain of grief. Grief involves painful emotions such as sadness, anger, and guilt. It can be tempting to avoid these feelings by burying them rather than facing them. However, working through grief means confronting, naming, and making sense of these emotions. Task number three, adjust to a world without the deceased. This doesn't mean forgetting or giving up, it simply means trying to adjust to a world without your loved ones. The death of a loved one will usually bring about a number of life changes. These can range from minor changes in your daily routines to the adoption of an entirely new worldview. The third task is about navigating through these changes and adjusting to the world without the loved one. Internal adjustments are changes to one's identity. Survivors may have to answer the question, who am I now? They may also experience changes to self esteem. External adjustments include taking on new roles and developing new skills. Survivors may have to take on the tasks that were handled by their loved ones, such as the cooking, the child care, handling of the bills, um, making repairs, different things like that. Spiritual adjustments are changes to beliefs, values, and assumptions about the world. For example, a belief that the world is fair might change after a loss. You might feel like nothing is fair. The survivor may choose to reaffirm, modify, or replace their previous worldviews. Task number four, find a way to remember the deceased while moving forward in your life. Again, it is not about forgetting or giving up, it is finding a way to remember while moving forward in life. Moving on doesn't mean forgetting, as I said. It means finding a place for the deceased in one's thoughts, a place that is important but still leaves room for others. Completing this task means finding a healthy balance between cherishing their memory and moving forward in your life. Now, we've had several griefs where we have several myths about grief. Okay? Grief is universal, but it's also unique. Everyone encounters grief, but no two people grieve in the same way. Even so, there are many myths about how people should grieve. This is going to help you learn the truth about these myths and reflect more deeply on your own grief journey. Myth number one, there is a right way to grieve. But in reality, some people cry, some people scream, some want to be alone, while others seek out social connection. Responses to grief vary widely from culture to culture and person to person. This is a unique process. People, it is a unique process. There is no one correct way to grieve. What's helpful in one moment may not be helpful in the next moment. What works for me may not work for you. May not work for you. Trust what feels right to you. Myth number 2, only the loss of a loved one causes grief. Reality is many types of loss can cause grief. Sometimes it's the loss of a loved one, other times it's the loss of a job or a life role. You can grieve pets, environmental destruction, and the plight of others. Grief can also happen when life doesn't meet your expectations or forces you to acknowledge limitations. For example, you may grieve a chronic illness or the physical changes of aging. Myth number 3, people need therapy to recover from grief. This is a good one, y'all. This is a good one. But in reality, in many cases, therapy is not needed after the loss of a loved one. However, some people feel therapy helps them navigate their grief journey, and there's nothing wrong with that, particularly when intense emotions are long lasting, or if depression sets in, or if it's complicated grief. Evaluate your need for professional support on a regular basis and do what's best for you. Another myth is avoiding bringing up someone's grief. But in reality, many feel their grief is invisible or unimportant to others, which can be a lonely experience. For some people, sharing or discussing their grief with others can be therapeutic. When people talk to you about their grief, it's therapeutic for them. Acknowledging someone's grief through a hug or a kind word is a powerful way to offer support in social connection. If you feel unable to do this face to face, consider calling or writing the person that is going through their grief. Another myth, grief should resolve after a certain period of time. This is a huge myth, guys. Grief should resolve after a certain period of time. But in reality, grief has no time frame. Some feel acute grief for a short time, while others struggle much longer. Grief can also change in intensity around holidays, anniversaries, and stressful life events. There is absolutely no time frame on grief, and don't ever let anyone tell you things like, you should be over it by now. You've grieved long enough. It's time to move on. Okay? Don't ever let people tell you those types of things when you're going through grief. While grief often lessens with time, significant losses will likely have an enduring impact on your lives forever. Another grief. Grief follows distinct stages. In reality, despite the popular belief that grief has 5 distinct stages, research does not back this up in its total view. Okay, you might skip stages or go through them in reverse order, or they may not apply to you at all. Feel free to refer to stage models if they are helpful, but follow your intuition above all else. No matter how it looks, your grief is real, is valid, and is meaningful. There is no one map for the grief journey. You have to do what's best for you. Another myth, grief is experienced in the same way across all cultures, but in reality, culture strongly shapes the grief experience. Some cultures see grief as a private and personal thing, while others approach it as a community phenomenon. Even within the same culture, individuals may grieve very differently based on factors such as age, religion, personality, family situation, and past experiences. Okay? Another myth, grief is just an intense form of sadness. You hear people saying it all the time. You just sad. But in reality, grief includes sadness, but it can also include many other emotions such as guilt, anger, jealousy, shame. Even positive emotions such as joy, gratitude, and hope may be a part of the grief experience. You may have a roller coaster of emotions around grief, particularly when a loss is recent. Then again, you may find that your emotions are inconsistent, consistent, and predictable. Experiences are going to vary. They are going to vary. Another myth, moving on is a betrayal of the deceased. This is a good one, y'all. I'm actually going through something similar in my grief journey right now. you know? In reality, after a loss, some feel they can't allow themselves to be happy, enter into a new relationship, or to move forward in life. They feel like if they're moving forward in life, if they entertaining, getting into a new relationship, or even the thought of being happy makes one feel like I'm betraying my lost loved one. Going on with life and seeking happiness does not mean that you have forgotten or stopped loving the person you lost. It's okay to move forward at the speed that feels right for you. Again, you have to do what's best for you. Another myth: advice is the best way to help someone who is grieving. But in reality, the temptation to give advice can be hard to resist. While your intentions may be good, advice come across as impersonal or even judgmental at times. So you have to be careful about giving people advice when they're grieving. Your presence is often the best thing you can offer the bereaved. Allow yourself to be affected by their pain. Remind them how much you care and be sensitive to their needs and their wishes. This concludes my commentary today on the tasks of mourning, and we knocked out some of these myths that goes around about grief. Stay tuned to my next video regarding the grieving process. Thank you for tuning in. Please hit the like button and share the video if you will. Until the next video, peace, love, and joy.